Me great pleasure to declare open the New Testament Church of God Faith Tabernacle building for worship, for the service of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And I do this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.
This is not just a building, you know. It's more than that. It's a place where people can come and find peace and comfort. It's a place where people can use, as I said, for a whole range of, you know, social or family type events.
It's a very, very big church. I remember the size of the tower as well. The tower's vast for the size of the church. So no, it's just an impressive building. And the quality of the restoration work that's been done in the church already, some of the timber work for the roof is really astounding. It's very, very nice to see quality work like that done in a building where it's worth doing. This is a fabulous building.
Cheetham Hill is unique, really, in that, you know, you can walk within this block almost from the church to a Sikh Gurdwara, and then of course at the top of the road, right at the top of Cheetham Hill, to a synagogue.
I live down Waterloo Road, and in my back garden I can see the, what do you call it? Steeple. Yes. I can see all of it there. And I thought, there's St. John's, there's St. John's, you know. And I thought they're going to leave it there until it fall apart.
It's got the new roof. You know, it just like, you know, it's the Cathedral of the North.
we feel that as a church here, then we have quite a very important impact in terms of pulling people together, a great opportunity to really just pull people together, pull communities together. Now, a little bit about the church. It was built was completed in 1871, and it's a great two-star listed building. The historical significance of it's really outstanding, because really being a great two-star listed building, what we found since we've been in, it's some wonderful architecture. We found some wonderful things that we have not even seen. Even after the opening, we're finding things out.
I'm David Wild. I'm the Managing Director of Henry Willis & Sons Organ Builders in Liverpool, and we've been requested to carry out an inspection of the organ in order to produce a conservation and preservation report for the organ. When I was 15, I think, I joined one of the local organist associations, and one of the first visits I ever went on was actually to this church. We've been working on restoring, you know, this building since then. Obviously, a great deal of work has gone on, and really thanks to everyone, people from my church, from our sister church, Brooks Bar, local people from the community who've helped to have an interest in the church. It's the largest church in the area. It holds about, the capacity is 600. It's slightly reduced now because there are some changes that have taken place, but it still can hold probably around about 450 people, and so that makes it quite significant in terms of having community events, religious events like marriages, wedding, funerals, baby dedication, things like that.
The heritage of this church, which was called St. John the Evangelist Church in Cheetham Hill, now called Faith Tabernacle, is recorded. There are members who belong to the Faith Tabernacle who were members of St. John the Evangelist Church way back in the 1960s.
Cheetham Hill is home to a multi-ethnic community, a result of several waves of immigration to Britain. In the mid-19th century, the Irish people fleeing the Great Famine, the Jewish community settled in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, fleeing persecution in continental Europe. Migrants from the Indian subcontinent and Caribbean settled in the 1950s and 1960s, invited to help rebuild Britain following the two world wars, and more recently people from Africa, Eastern Europe and the Far East. Cheetham Hill Road is lined with churches, mosques, synagogues and temples, as well as terraced houses dating from its history as a textile processing district.
You know, the whole kind of demographics of the area. Obviously, since 1871, the area has changed tremendously now. You have people from quite a number of different countries living in Cheetham Hill, some who now come to this church. But it wasn't like that in 1871, and over the years, obviously, the whole population of Cheetham Hill has changed significantly.
Renowned local DJ Irfan Raini, of second generation Pakistan origins, grew up in Cheetham Hill and lived opposite the church.
This was the Afro-Caribbean community. This was the area a lot of them lived in, a lot of the area. And then this is the border between Salford and Manchester here. That's Lower Broughton on the other side there, which is quite a heavy Irish population, for what I remember. And then next to Lower Broughton, further up to High Broughton, is where there's a significant Jewish community. The church obviously is still here. I can't remember what used to be on that side, but the post office is still here. Obviously, that area there, they've built a new Islamic centre. That's what I'm saying, is a heavily Muslim population here. And as you can see, the Sikh brothers are still here. You know, it's still very mixed. But the other thing that's changed as well is there's a bigger Arab community here now. There's a lot of Libyan people still living here. So my mum and dad, I guess, I think they came in the 60s, and I think they've always lived in Cheetham Hill. Well, they always settled there. I was born in Cromsall Hospital, which is North Manchester General, and we used to live on, my first house as a child was 13 Bellot Street, and the church is just there. And I knew about the church, but I never really kind of knew what the congregation was. I wouldn't have known it was an Afro-Caribbean congregation. And my street was always very, very mixed, because we had Jewish, Italian, Ukrainian, Polish, Indian, Pakistani, Afro-Caribbean, well, Nigerian and Jamaican, that I can remember.
I was of the opinion that when a lot of the migrants came in the late 50s, that everybody came to Moss Side and then moved out. But in actual fact, some of the people from the Caribbean came straight to Cheetham Hill. And so therefore they have a very long history of living and working in and around the Cheetham Hill area.
When they came from the Caribbean in the 1960s, there wasn't a New Testament Church of God in Cheetham Hill. And this was the church that most of them went to. Family members, you know, people got married here. Their children were christened here. They had the funeral service for their departed beloved here. And some have served in the choir here, and they've been attending this church. In the 60s, they've a close connection to this church throughout the 70s, 80s and 90s, and even when I arrived here in 2008.
I remember you telling me, Mum, the reason why you moved from Jamaica with Dad to come over here was a better life, right? So, which job did you do first, and what was the best? Where did you live? Where did you guys live first, way before I was born?
Well, I didn't come with your dad. I met your dad over here.
Alright, okay.
I come to Manchester, and my first job was auxiliary nursing in the hospital.
Okay. When the relationship progressed on,
Mm-hmm.
and when he proposed, what was that like for you and everything?
That was all right for me.
Alright. Well, here's the proof of the wedding photos. August the 24th, 1960, Mr. Uriah Buckle and Mrs. G. Buckle passed the piano at St. John Church, which is now New Testament Church of God, as we see.
Sister Mary, or Mother Mary Slaven, as she is affectionately known, came to live and work in Cheetham Hill. Mother Mary is an active, vibrant member of the Faith Tabernacle and local community and has a strong link with the church, what was formerly known as St. John the Evangelist. She is a regular and willing cook for the group.
I came to England 1962 and I came right in Cheetham Hill to live. The first street I was living in, it was called, this same street, Haywood Street. And then I get a job in North Street, that is off Cheetham Hill Road. And the place there, the factory was called Prodex Empress. And I used to make foils, cling foils, fridge bags, and many more things used to work. And my first wages was £5. But that £5 could feed a multitude. It go a long way because Cheetham Hill was Cheetham Hill.
The kitchen,
I'm busy cooking rice and peas and curry.
Now there's a reason why you're cooking all this beautiful food, isn't there?
Because you come.
Oh right.
To entertain you lot.
Oh, brilliant.
Why taking all this?
Brilliant. Oh, that looks really nice.
Lamb.
Okay.
Curry. That's curry. And this is the rice and peas.
I'm looking forward to that.
And as you see, I need a dishwasher. I've got to be washing the pots with my hands.
People like Mother Mary also attend activities connected with the church. Today we'll meet a few of the group who work or live in the area.
I never live in Cheetham Hill, but I work in Cheetham Hill in the 60s at a place named Henry Wall Works down by Lord Street. And there was a lot of, it was heavy work, there was a lot of African, Polish, Ukrainian, and in the end, a lot of Pakistanis started to work there. And I come friendly with the Pakistani, quite a few Pakistani. And then, so give them a lift home, take them home sometime. So live up Holloway Road in the center. And they invited me for a cup of tea this morning. And in those days, there wasn't a lot of Asian shop around. And I gave them a lift home. And when I went to their home, they invited me upstairs, the room facing the front of the street, or the top of this house. And there was 2 double beds. There was about 7 of them living in that room. And there was work, there was night shift and day shift in the wall works down there. And then when the morning shift come in from work, the night shift get up, empty the bed, they could go to sleep. And to my surprise, there was 2 sheep in the room, in the corner.
Really?
Yeah. And I suppose because those days there was not a shop around, like they call them all and meat shop. In those days there was a lot around then. So I assumed that they cooked their own, kill their own all and meat in the backyard. And a very nice Asian family, Pakistani family. In those days, as I said, there was not a lot of Asian shop. There was maybe 1 or 2 Indian restaurant, Pakistani restaurant. It wasn't like now, being different in those days. But I said Carey Spring is known, Carey Spring was the next iron foundry near there.
Stephen takes us round on a tour of the area where he used to work.
All these weren't here, this place wasn't here. It was just pavement both sides, people going to work at the iron foundry, come back.
So where was the iron foundry then?
Down here at the bottom here.
Oh, right
down here at the bottom here. So when it's winter in the snow body, you struggle to come up in the snow.
Right. So what was here?
Here is a Carey Spring there. In the water was here. This bridge down here, this was slaughter meat down here.
Oh.
Used to be here the iron foundry. There's a slaughter meat somewhere down here.
So the iron foundry was here?
Was here the iron foundry.
Right.
You could turn here to go to Victoria Station.
Yes.
Here.
And further down there was an abattoir, was it?
Abattoir, and in the morning there used to be a half-full smell. But here they used to use the meat for make cans for dog meat and cat meats. Like I come back here now, it's really opened my eyes to see how much it has changed so much. To show you how the world has changed. And men who should work here, if I tell them how his place has changed and bring a show them a place, it's a high opener. It's amazing. But when the snow, used to be all this tarmac, it was just rough flag on the pavement. There was no tarmac like this here. And when the snow, you struggle because you used to be night shift, day and night shift. So when they would come out, the suburb with all snow, and it was snow in those days. It was really good, thick, heavy snow. We used to struggle up the hill in this thick snow. And the next thing we notice, when we finish and we have showered, it'll be all gang going up, like we have in football ground. It was so much people working. It was maybe 120 people working here. It's a big iron foundry, really big iron foundry.
So was it literally here then?
It was right here. Wow. And you could go through the door. You have a canteen here, you have a canteen here. And we used to come out the front door, walk up a bit to the canteen, get something to eat. Come out and walk inside there. And used to go right away back, almost to Victoria Station. It was a big foundry.
You know, one of the things that I've done. I mean, I love to do more, and the reason why I'm not full time. I'm not a full time minister, and that will come. That will come. I think, and that would afford me a lot more time to really get involved with some of the activities in the community. But I think, our church has been really front and center of what's been going on in this area for a very, very long time. So just when I came, I just got on board what had gone on before. We had a very vibrant Churches Together group, and I just continued with that. And we've got others in our church, our youth director particularly, who are very, very good at making bridges with other community.
First name is I'm Anna Maria Krill. Okay, I've lived in Cheetham Hill all my life from the 4th of January 1961. I'm of Italian, Ukrainian descent, so I do come from a multicultural background. I've been coming to Coffee Morning for just over 12 months now because of my need to keep fit. Basically because in 2014 I became unwell after developing pneumonia, and I ended up in North Manchester General Hospital. When I was growing up from 1961 to 1969, it was basically Jewish. When I was born, my neighbours were mainly Russian Jews that came here possibly the turn of the last century. Where Pastor Buckle lived was Jewish before she moved in. The house that my father bought in 1957, Jewish, Russian Jews. Number 11 Kelvin Grove, English. 13 Kelvin Grove, Jewish.
Тебе забьет молодой.
We're now going along Cheetham Hill Road. Where the Kisra Mosque now stands was the first Ukrainian club here on the UKIM Centre. Right. Here where the Kisra Mosque and the ABS MOT station was a stonemason. On your right hand side where the houses are now was the Northern Hospital. This is the Ukrainian church for the Ukrainian community in Manchester. This church originally came into existence in 1955. It was bought by the Ukrainian community as they had no church of their own. And from 1955 to present day, it has gone from strength to strength. Obviously now the community has declined because people have gotten older, they've become unwell or passed away. And this legacy has been handed down to people of my generation and so forth. So with your permission, let's go and have a look inside.
Our connection with the Ukrainian community was through the Caribbean events that we held at the Ukrainian club. And again, don't forget, as part of the Cheetham Festival, one of the fascinating, interesting details of Cheetham Hill is the most remarkable Ukrainian Orthodox church, which is practically next door to the synagogue at the top of Cheetham Hill Road.
Father Volodymyr Sampara. I'm a parish priest of this church, starting from the 15th of May 2013. So we started service in this church, a beautiful community which is aged of more than 100 years old. So the first inhabitants of Manchester arrived approximately in 1893 during Austro-Hungarian Empire, those times in our Ukrainian land. They were looking for better life, and they were traveling to the bigger and new worlds of America. And someone stranded here because they did not have funds to start traveling on their ships to the United States, to America or other countries. So some of their families stayed here and started their Ukrainian community life, so more than 100 years. And also the best emigration wave started in 1947 after the Second World War, when more than 30,000 Ukrainian militants, former militants, were accepted by Mr. Churchill, and they were saved from Bolsheviks' arrest and sending to Siberia or being killed because they were fighting for Ukraine. So they were main enemies of Russia and former Soviet Union. So Mr. Churchill, God bless his soul, saved them, and also many Ukrainian ladies and youth from other countries who found themselves after the war came here and started their nice Ukrainian life. So Mr. Wisniewski, before the Second World War, organized Ukrainian social club, and so that time till now we have a beautiful Ukrainian culture center, Dnipro, on the Smedley Lane near Cheetham Hill, and this church has a big history of Ukrainian community. So all religious events, all our marriages, baptismals, even funerals were organized till 1954, when Father Highly Reverend Volodymyr Dzioba organized and purchased this beautiful church from the Methodist community, a former biblical school for boys and girls, and it was consecrated by Lord Bishop Ivan Buchko in 1954 in August, and was named of the Holy Mary, Sovereign of the Universe.
Bloody Coffee Morning, they've been having that session for a number of years, and that is open. It's a drop-in, so that's open to quite a number of people, to anyone in the community. And a lot of the people who attend that Coffee Morning are from this church, but we do have people from other churches as well, and people from the community attend as well. And so it is quite important really just to maintain that kind of a social program of the church. It's one of our main social programs that we do. Obviously, we're looking to do other things, but that provides an important link to here. A lot of the older members of this church and the people who attend the coffee morning, they know this church very, very well. When they came from the Caribbean in the 1960s, there wasn't a New Testament Church of God in Cheetham Hill, and this was the church that most of them went to.
There were a few people in church. I would say about 20. This is about 22 years ago. And then gradually it reduced. And then Reverend Talbot, Sue Talbot, came along, and our mission was to close the church down. Basically, that was our mission. But she saw potential.
Well, I'm Rev Sue, as I was known on the street, one of the first women priests in the Anglican Church, so somewhat controversial and contentious because some people don't really think that's a right thing. But I used to say that it's Christ's table, it's Christ's food that we give to people, and you're just a connector. You hope to, through prayer and dedication and, please God, an authentic vocation, that you connect people with the mystery of the living God.
Reverend Sue. So she came to help us out because the church was cold, damp.
You couldn't stop people coming, as cold as it was. There were people coming because there's a special warmth in here.
And so I came, and the congregation at that time was a very small, elderly congregation, and the church was extremely cold. That is what I think I remember. And it was Mrs. Alma Weeks, who is the warden. She actually came down, walked across, and she was so pleased to see me. Come, we need young people like you.
There was somebody who'd come to the church on a desperate day when Alma Weeks, who I think you've spoken to, and John Simister, very important, both of them, and Cynthia's husband, I think, wasn't there, but the four wardens are very crucial people.
Alma being church warden, you see, anything go wrong, the police phone her that the alarm is going off, or the rain falling, and she phoned me, she says, "Oh, well, let's come and put the buckets and basins out." So we had to come out at nights and early morning and come and to catch all the water that's pouring through, So that's what we do.
We worship on Sundays with hot water bottles and also gas heaters just to keep the church warm and to keep us going, because we were determined not to let the church close.
The bishop asked me to come and look at Cheetham Hill, and it was in a terrible state. I mean, just desperate. Loads of stuff had been stolen from the church. It was that he wanted me to close it down, and I agreed. So the diocese had understandably very mixed feelings when I changed tack.
Sue then decided, because they had sent, to our opinion, we think they have sent her to close the church now, but after she see that we were just a handful of us, only about 6 of us, were determined to keep the church going, she thought, well, no, these people we're fighting for. So that's how the lottery grant came into, because she applied for the lottery grant as someone to get all the building up and going. So when they got the lottery grant, everything then started to turn around, more or less. So that's why the church is as it is. Still standing, still getting worshipping.
Bishop Stephen Lowe had been instrumental with Susan Gabriel Talbot in saving this church and getting it through the Diocesan Mission and Pastoral Committee, because there was a lot of opposition to whether it was wise to be spending all this money on this church. But Stephen Lowe was a big champion of the inner city. He later on became bishop for the inner cities, for the whole Church of England. And he was a big champion of the inner city areas and of this church, and so he pushed it through. And he was the one who interviewed me for the job, appointed me, and inducted me on that evening. I mean, it was quite clear that as far as this building was concerned, my brief was to come up with a scheme to redesign the inside, and then raise the money for it. Right. And over the first 3 years, from 2003 to 2006, we started to do that, and we got various people involved to help us. We had a consultant called the Reverend Mark Waters, who worked for Church Action on Poverty, an Anglican priest from Liverpool. He helped us in what's called a Planning for Real exercise, involving one of the local schools. We had very, very good close relationship with Temple Primary School on Smedley Lane, great relationship with that school, and they helped us with that process. We did various open days and sessions for the wider church and community to get people's input on what they wanted to see in this building, because it was quite clear that we needed to turn it into a dynamic community centre, a vibrant community centre, as well as the home of a worshipping congregation.
Well, Reverend Sue left and Reverend Daniel came, and it's during his tenure we did a great deal of ecclesiastical stuff. You know, we went to visits in different regions. He always took people to the theatre in the evenings. Abraham Moss itself is closed because it used to be very contained, and now it's opening up more. Yeah, those are some of the changes, really.
I've been done this right for maybe 20 years, 25 years, maybe 20 years. Yeah. Wow. I don't even, are we allowed to drive in here? Abraham Moss High School. Yeah. It's got a bit of a Jewish name, that, hasn't it? Abraham Moss. Yeah, I think so. It must be a Jewish connection.
Abraham Moss used to have the recording studio, and the Abraham Moss Theatre used to be there.
Right, I'm Jade of Mystery. I worked at the Abraham Moss in the theatre about 30 years ago now, I think it is. I was there for about a year, and I was the rookie theatre technician. Stroke looked after the little track recording studio we had there.
All that has gone because Dave Moutry used to be involved in that, and then he went to manage home.
I'm Dave Moutry. I was the theatre manager at the Abraham Moss Centre for 6.5 years, and sort of did all sorts there, from fundraising to technical work to producing shows, finding money to build recording studios, all that sort of stuff.
Another change is obviously Abraham Moss, you know, soon after. In terms of the youth service changed markedly. You had the North Manchester College, and then further education, all that was restructured, and some of the youth work went. The residential wing was there when we used to have allow young people to actually use the resi wing for a week, and they would learn different skills, and they would learn how to cook and take them away. And it was a time that they could get away from family, you know, just to have a breathing space and have space for themselves to be themselves in a different environment. That went, and obviously now we've got a totally different ethos in terms of community education, and there's an Abraham Moss is new now, so totally new building.
Is this place still a school?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's still a school.
You want to show where the cutting rooms is now?
Yeah, well, it's right,
Chris,
right
you'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
The studio was called the cutting room, but it was round the back here. Sure it was. Either we went in this door, because I remember we used to park in the back. Yeah, here.
Oh, this is where the cutting rooms was.
Yeah, I'm sure we used to enter around the back here.
Yeah.
No?
I don't even recognise it.
I know, I don't recognise, because it's a little school play thing now, isn't it?
It was really interesting coming into the theatre and being able to work with some of the people from the FE College, because I think it was North Manchester College at the time, and the Abraham Moss High School were both in the same building, and the youth service, etc., had got really strong networks in the local community, so it meant I could get very quick access to a wider community, and I thought it was really interesting because you'd have people from Pakistan, India, first and second generation, from Africa, from the Caribbean, from the Ukraine. There was quite a big Jewish community from different parts of the world. Irish, there was quite a strong Irish community there as well. And what I found really interesting, and I don't know whether this is looking back rose-tinted glasses, but actually there was a lot of sort of rubbing alongside of each other quite nicely. People, got on with stuff. I don't know whether it was something to do. It felt like a small town that was 1,000 miles away from Manchester city centre. It felt, it was much more of a community on Cheetham Hill Road. And although it was part of Manchester, it felt like it wasn't.
It felt. I mean, today, I don't go up to Cheetham Hill much these days, but whenever I do go, it still feels the same to me in that respect.
One of the other aspects of the church in Cheetham Hill is that they have very good links with other faiths. So they have good links with the Sikh community, the the Muslim community, and they have good links with the Polish community as well. And they are often to be found involved with community events. So things like Springfest, where a whole range of the community are involved in that festival. And the relationships that they have with other faiths is really, really very, very impressive. So that helps to build the community, and it helps to ensure that community cohesion stays firmly where it should be, which is intact and in place, and having a greater understanding and knowledge of each other, so we don't get that separation that there can be in communities where people just simply don't mix. That's not the case in Cheetham Hill.
Chris Manus, another well-respected musician who didn't grow up in Cheetham Hill but attended the Manchester School of Art, which is now Salford Van Hire.
This is where my musical education started, right here really. I was here in the 70s, and I remember there was a Trinidadian guy, I can't remember his name, but he used to come and teach steel pans and stuff, and he had two congas with him, and I was fascinated by those drums. As soon as I saw them, I was just fascinated. I thought, I'm going to play them one day. along with everything else, you know. And that's where it started. But also here, for me, I was brought up in Blakely, and when I came here, there was all kinds of different people here. There was second generation West Indian people here, all kinds of people, and they had this music with them, this reggae music, and I just couldn't get over how amazing. It's just I always loved rhythm, and this was amazing. This music was amazing because you could have different versions of it, you know, the dub and all that kind of thing. And that just fascinated me. And I just got hooked on that. And as I said last night, I've been island hopping ever since. You know, I've been to Puerto Rico, studied in Puerto Rico, studied in New York with the Cubans and the Puerto Ricans and stuff. Been to Cuba to study Cuban drumming and stuff. Okay. But this is where it all started, right here. Really, you can trace it right back to here. And that Trinidadian guy, whose name I can't remember. And he's probably still around.
What was the school called?
It's called a High School of Art. Yeah. And this is talking to you, this is the first time I've really spoken about it, because my youth wasn't too happy really, and I've just kind of left it behind, you know what I mean? But it feels good just to, you know, to come back again and just talk about it, you know.
And it's right next to Strangeways of all places.
That's right. That's and it was the old story where if you couldn't see the tower, if it was foggy, then you could have a day off. I don't think that ever worked out that way, but that was the story. And it was a good school. I do remember it was a good school. The teachers actually cared about you. Really did care about you, you know.
During filming, Chris decides to visit the church featured in this film and has a tour of the building.
As you can see, a lot of extensive work, all those new beams up there.
Yeah.
Had to be replaced. Stuff in the Heritage Centre, and if you look around the sides as well of the building, you can see all the new woodwork that needed to be put in, all the new joists. But it had to be done very, very carefully because of the building, and it had to be done in consent with the Heritage Lottery Fund, because what we're preserving is the heritage of the building.
Of course.
So, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Completely beautiful, and it's such a beautiful place.
It looks bigger on the inside.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Beautiful.
So what they've done is, you know, to carefully preserve the work as much as they could. And as you can see, we've got this, but it's a lot of money. You know, a lot of money.
Yeah, it's been used well though.
Oh, I tell you, it's beautiful. We had our opening in June this year.
Our church has been a real front and center of what's been going on in this area for a very, very long time. So just when I came, I just got on board what had gone on before. We had a very vibrant Churches Together group, and I just continued with that. And we have got others in our church, our youth director particularly, who are very, very good at making bridges with other community. I think the whole history for the heritage project that we want to set up here is absolutely vitally important, and I really can't stress how important that is. You see, we have quite a lot of members in the community, people who came here as young girls, boys, in the 60s, the 50s, 60s, and they've watched the area. That I've heard that this road where the church is located in the 70s, there used to be shops running down here. You know, people used to come along here and buy their fish, and now we look at it, it's just houses, and it doesn't look that exciting. And the whole area of Cheetham Hill, pretty exciting. And their own stories of how it was for them, you know, people, you know, coming into a new community from overseas, the kind of issues they face, how they dealt with that, how they managed, you know, in terms of growing up their kids as well, how they have seen changes over the years, you know, connecting with the local church and so on. You can't really put a price tag on that. And to capture it now before they are not able to say it. That is important for me.